Today we have Frank Reitz. Frank Reitz did speak to us before, and particularly around Florida Road and a bit on his background, etc. He's no stranger to this platform. So I'll introduce him, and then Frank, the platform will be yours. Frank Reitz graduated from University of Natal, BAc degree in 1989. He served as a member of the following committees: National Monuments Council, Regional Plans Committee 1994 to 1996, alternate member for Professor Wally Peters of National Monuments Council, Regional Plans Committee between 1993 to 1994 and 1996 to 1999, member of AMAFA, Agwas Natal Built Environment Committee between 2003 and 2005, member of AMAFA, eThekwini Municipality Liaison Committee between 2007 and 2009, member of eThekwini Municipality Elevation Control Committee between 1993 and 1996. He has been a member of SAIA KZN Heritage Committee since 1985. I was not an architect there yet, Frank. Frank ran his own practice between 1996 to 2009. He thereafter worked for eThekwini Municipality Architecture Department between 2010 and 2022. Since 2022, he has run his own practice specializing in architectural heritage consultation. Thank you so much, Frank. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Skuro. Can everybody hear me? I'm going to try and share my screen. I'll just see if I can do that. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, nice and visible.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let me just... I'm going to be looking off to my upper because I've got another screen above my laptop. So sorry, I'm not trying to be impersonal, but I'm just following my screen. Let's go to... All right. So the subject matter really is something I've been working on for the last 5 years. That I really felt that the proper way to manage heritage in eThekwini, and I kind of stuck to the eThekwini metropolitan area because I was in the employ of eThekwini municipality at the time. But this was all done in my own time. It wasn't a city project. I didn't get that much response from the city architecture department when I presented this to them. So I just carried on in my own time doing this this study. Now it's a compilation of all different documents that I came across that had been done in various parts of the metropolitan area, and I felt that there should really only be one document, and that all of these need to be combined. And so really it is a compilation of various studies. I've added to it a bit, and I've sourced all sorts of documents, but I'll run through that. Let me go to my first slide. Maybe I should just go through the title quickly, because my first slide actually tries to break down or to unpack this title that I've shown. It is a thesis in its own, towards a working title of important, tangible and immovable architectural, historical, cultural, social assets, bracket heritage resources of all communities in the eThekwini metro area. A compilation of studies by various academics, professionals and organizations by myself over the last 5 years. Let me go to my first slide. Now, just to kind of break down that title, a working list. I want this list to really be a document that can be used on a day-to-day basis by professionals or property professionals, estate agents, that informs really the status of each of these protected sites. So a working list, not something that just is put on a shelf and gathers dust. Important, speaks for itself. Those that are deemed to be of quality, whether it be architecture or of social consequence to a community. Tangible and immovable. Tangible being that it is, you can drop a pin on it and say that is what it is, where it is. It isn't a story. It isn't something that is, it is something real. It is tangible. Immovable, a tangible object could be an object that can be moved and moved to another. So it's an immovable object that we're talking about in this case. Then the architectural, that kind of speaks for itself as well. We've been grading architecture for thousands of years, so that's what this is. An historical event of some sort that can actually be pinpointed, said this battle happened here, or this meeting happened here. Cultural and social. I think if something is important to a community, like a temple or a mosque or whatever it might actually be, then it should be important to everybody, and it should be respected. A heritage resource asset. Now, asset sort of speaks of value, and it does have value, but maybe not monetary value, but value of another kind, of a more important kind than money. It speaks of the kind of soul of the people, how civilization expresses themselves in the built form, what is important to them, and how they live. So that really kind of breaks down that part of the title. Then just this part, which I'm going to just run through very quickly, and I just really want to touch on this extremely lightly, because it does get quite controversial, and I don't want controversy. I really want everybody to work together on these things, and that's really what it's about. That this list is done in the spirit of these two amazing documents in front of you, that really make South Africa a quality place. These are absolutely amazing documents. They're probably the best in the world. And we really should be living in the spirit of these. And that all communities are important, that all heritage is important. And we need to respect that. Everybody needs to respect each other and move on. As I said, if a site is important to a specific group of people, then it should be important to all. And enlighten, in a spirit of non-racist parameters of these two documents, progressive and forward-looking. And I probably repeat myself a couple of times here, but I'm just trying to express myself. Assess purely on architectural, historical, and social importance. If there are stigmas attached to various properties and things like that, that to me is a different argument, and it's not. I'm not qualified to make those. I'm just qualified to really assess things on an architectural and historical, because I feel I'm a student of those things. So that being said, let's move forward. Just to kind of repeat what Skuro actually said, my name, Frank Reitz. If you struggle with my surname, That's how it's pronounced, Reitz. If you can say Reitz, you can say my surname. It's Afrikaans. The EI is pronounced A. Um, it was German before, so it was Reitz, but it isn't that anymore. We Afrikaans. So I've got 40 years of experience at doing heritage matters. I've sat on the Institute Heritage Committee for 40 years. In my second year of study, I felt that this is something that I was interested in and that I wanted to pursue it as a specialization. I've sat on all these various committees. Professor Peters gave me the great privilege of giving me the experience of sitting in for him at on National Monuments Council, then became a MAFA later. And he put a lot of trust in me to sit in his place. I've kind of pursued the Amarfa thing off and on. All these things that you see here, eThekwini municipal, elevation control, whatever it might actually be, have all been voluntary things. I haven't been paid a cent doing any of these things. And I felt that was fairly important, that I had to actually display my passion, that money corrupts, and I would not be part of that. And I was doing this stuff always for the right reasons. Okay, that being said as well, let's move on. In my little poster that I put forward, I showed the two buildings on the left-hand side, the Marine Hotel and the Students' Union building of the Natal Technikon, both beautiful buildings that have been demolished for, the Marine Hotel up on your left hand has been replaced by probably the biggest urinal in Durban. Sorry, my opinion. And really should have been still in place, because this could have been our wonderful Victorian hotel of an era, like a lot of colonial cities like Delhi and things like that have and still celebrate today. The Students' Union building, that was demolished to put a section of freeway in next to the railway lines, which is infrequently used now as well. But it's the only building that really is only Durban building that is entered into Bannister Fletcher's The History of Architecture. For you that don't know, I hope all of you architects know that Bannister Fletcher really is the go-to student history book in the world. And our one entry, Durban's one entry was this building, and it was demolished. Tragically, a beautiful style modern building with its curved glass brick staircases on the sides. The three in the middle, all kind of grouped together: the old market, the ABC Chambers building, and the old telephone exchange building, all demolished as well. Regrettably, I mean, they are really beautiful buildings. I really, they might be colonialist buildings to have stigmas attached to them, but you cannot deny that they are beautifully crafted buildings of skills that no longer exist. The one to be demolished, the large picture, is the Ocean Terminal building. Unfortunately, this building has just been given a demolition permit by Amarfa to create a container port, which is really quite tragic, really. I rate this building as the second best modernist building in Durban, only second to Norman Eaton's Nedbank building. And we're about to lose it. It really is quite, and that's really why I've showed this, really, because this is why I do this, that we shouldn't live in regret. We shouldn't only enjoy these things on photographs. Um, these sort of buildings give the building character and give the building soul. Um, a city without a history is a city without a soul. Um, End quote. Yeah, I can't say too much more about that. There have been some success stories. The old Colombo building was earmarked for demolition as well, and was fought for, and they then incorporated into the Broadwalk Centre. Unfortunately, the infill architecture is really quite, what did I call it the other day? No-name brained architecture. It is really quite sad, because it hasn't actually stood the test of time. It might have been a infill attitude where you try and keep the building as simple and bland as possible and highlight the old building. But it really is quite sad. Colombo has moved out of the building now, and Nando's has moved in, but at least the building is still there. The brickwork has been painted. It is quite sad, the little building. Although Nando's has moved into the building, the coffee brand is still around. And cheers, I'm having some Colombo right now. It's still a really good cup of coffee. Now, why a listing? Um, uh, Throughout the world, the best way to preserve your heritage and your built fabric that expresses that heritage is by understanding what you have, an inventory of what you have, called differently in various areas, a listings or a state register, or different types of them, but it's essentially the same thing. It really is a detailed mapping of what you see as the quality built form um, in any part of the world. A similar sort of study done in Stellenbosch, quite honestly, a very similar way of phrasing things as well, than what I did. I just want to go through this sort of hierarchy of listings in the world, and how various organizations um, are tasked at policing or looking after such things. The first one is UNESCO and World Heritage Sites up top. Then you get various grades in South African grades. Grade 1 is a building or a property of national importance that is administered by SARA. Grade 2 is of provincial importance, so you'll have a different organization, each different province. We have a MAFA in KwaZulu-Natal that looks after those buildings. You then get grade 3 buildings, and that really is the contentious bit over there, and of course the 60-year clause, but I'll get to that. Grade 3 buildings are of local importance, in other words, kind of city for city or metro by metro. And the actor actually says that the municipality is responsible um for monitoring and supervising these listings. In this province, any of the cities haven't actually got their act together and do not actually follow follow the act, and it's fallen on a MAFA to do the grade 2 buildings, the grade 3 buildings, and the 60-year clause. Now, the 60-year clause is a clause in the both the National and Provincial Act that says that any building over 60 years old, now being 1964, anything that was built before 1964 needs to be it can be altered and changed or demolished, but an application has to be made to do so to the Heritage Authority, which in this case is IMAFA. The 60-year clause really has become quite cumbersome, that the whole of KwaMashu, the whole of Durban North, the whole of Chatsworth is now over 60 years old. So in theory, any changes to those buildings will have to have IMAFA permission first. And this has really become a massive problem, and that, well, yeah, people that sorry, he's talking to me. That they double standards that are held by IMAFA. They just wait for applications to come in, and if people do apply, they give them a hard time. But they're not policing those people that aren't. That so much work is happening out there that isn't being applied for, and that it just carries on regardless. They don't have the means or the structure to police things on the ground, and they rely on the municipalities to do that. But the communication between IMAFA and the municipalities aren't great. Believe me, I know. I was there for 11.5 years, and it really is become a problem to such a point that I just want to illustrate something quickly. You know, IMAFA has got all this extra work that they're doing, that the municipalities are doing, but yet they're making more work for themselves. Where I was sitting in a meeting the other day, and I heard that they were giving the architect a hard time because the building that she was applying for had been the color had been changed, and granted, in the act it actually does say color as but in the spirit of it, really means that if the color has impact on that building, IMAFA is interpreting it, as their chairman is a lawyer now, as a lawyer would. They are interpreting it that you know, any building, even if you maintain your building, you're painting it every few years. If your building just happens to be over 60 years old, you're going to have to apply to IMAFA first. And in fact, if you paint it first and then apply, they'll give you a 10,000 Rand fine as well. And it's really become quite ludicrous. The management of the 60-year clause has become a real problem. I'm not one that thinks that the 60-year-old clause needs to be dropped. I think that there's merit in the 60-year clause. I think it should be a catch net, and buildings that are become 6 years old need to be assessed fairly quickly and said, you know, does it have merit or not? Does it have significance? And the question really should be, should it be put on a list? Or if it's not good enough for a list, then just let it go. Write off the fact that it is no longer, it is not important. Let development happen. Now, that being said, grade 3 listings, well, let me go up to the top again. The World Heritage Sites, I just want to run through that. These are the World Heritage Sites in South Africa. There are 8 of them. I did this a little while ago, so there might well be others. I'm sure somebody will let me know. But there are 2 in KwaZulu-Natal, St. Lucia and the Drakensberg, none in the eThekwini, my study area. So grade 1 listed buildings, let's go to those that are listed by SARA. These are the grade 1 listed buildings in South Africa. They're 6 of them. Again, this might have changed. I did this a few years ago, but from this snapshot, you can actually see that there are 0 in KwaZulu-Natal, and notwithstanding none in eThekwini municipality as well. Something wrong with that picture. I really think that we do have properties, important sites that really need to be added to this list, and one needs to have a look at that. Now let's go to the grade 2 listable of provincial importance. I've just taken out those that are in eThekwini, and there are quite a few of them. There's 3 pages of them. Those are the 3 pages. Those are really the protected sites that I've gone and been published in a government the provincial government gazette, and said that these buildings are of significance. Most of them were really done because of that they were threatened at one time. This was a list that was kind of taken over from National Monuments Council, and they were called National Monuments, not National Monuments before. Now they're called a Provincial Heritage Resource, protected site. And yeah, I really think that a lot of these can be revalued as well. Let's move on. Now let's go to the grade 3 buildings, and that's the contentious one, and that really what started the listing that I've done. Professor Brian Carney in 1984 produced this document here, which really was a revised listing of an earlier document done by a liaison committee between the city and the Institute of Architects. Brian Carney then did this revised listing, which really has become the only document and go-to document if you want to actually see whether your building is listed or not. This is the only document that is recognized by the eThekwini municipality, although 2 revisions were done. But Sakani wanted to actually revise this document every 5 years, and which is a really good thing to actually, because it is a living document. It's not just a dead thing. And but the last one was done in 1994. I think the funds probably ran out or something like that. I'm not sure why any subsequent ones were done. Amarfa recognized this document. They also recognized, or they recognized other documents as well, as heritage registers. This is not the 60-year-old clause. Really is the statutory thing. That is, any building that is over 60 is the statutory thing. These documents really just reinforce the importance and the significance of those structures. Brian Carney only listed really a certain part of eThekwini, which was really the central areas, and kind of between Durban North and Queensborough, Pinetown, that sort of area is where he ring-fenced this his study. He also only went to 1948 as well. So any buildings that are younger and of importance do not appear in this document. One of the other limitations is that it is only one person's opinion, this, although he's a renowned academic, it's quite difficult sometimes to justify that only one person's decision is valid. You'll see later that I feel that it should be a quorum of interested people that should make these sort of decisions. The availability of this document is really, really difficult to get a hold of. This is my copy. You can see it's water damage and things like that, but I've used it a lot, and it is quite important because it's the closest to a working document that I I've seen, because it is used on a constant basis. The city have uploaded all these sites onto their system, not onto their GIS, but onto their systems. So they know every property in here, and they're about 1,100 odd in this book. Okay, let's move on then. What I've done here is really just kind of looked at the eThekwini metropolitan area, which goes from Tongaat down to Ungababa, and then Hammersdale areas. So those the kind of triangular shape of the metropolitan area. This ringed area is the area that Professor Carney actually looked at in his studies. What I've included in my documentation, as I said, it's a compilation of all sorts of studies. This is Professor Peters' 3 works, and thank you, Ollie. I got these from Marfa. They gave me copies of these, and I've included all of your entries into these into this one document as well. And Professor Peters looked at Tongaat Verulam areas in one study. He looked at the Queensbury area, and then kind of the south coast areas of Amanzimtoti. And as I said, I've included these areas in my study. Professor Dennis Radford did this amazing little book on architecture, a reference book. Now, the difference between this, although it covers pretty much the same study area that Professor Carney looked at, this study looks at more contemporary buildings, buildings that might not be over 60 years old. Really concentrates on the BDG buildings of the 70s and buildings of the 80s, but really was a very good reference point. That being said, my listing really doesn't want to only look at 60-year-old buildings, but wants to look at any building that has been through some sort of peer review, like winning a competition or been given an award. I think those need to go directly into a list as important buildings, and I've included a lot of contemporary buildings in my list, and I'll go through that later. The Inanda Heritage Route, done by the city of eThekwini municipality, in the northern part of which include the Inanda Seminary, the Gandhi sites, the Shembe sites, the Dube sites. But there are quite a few other sites that aren't on the official heritage list, and I've looked at some of them. I've spent quite a bit of time in Nanda when I was working for the city, and Professor Harper and I have actually went up into and Nina Sanders as well, went up into the and did quite a lot of wrecking there as well. They're the Dr. Pixar Kasema sites and the oh, sorry, her name slipped me, but she's they're quite important sites. I'll come back to it just now. Nina and I put together a very important little study in the southern part of in the Umbumbulu Adams Mission area, done by Expectra, and very thoroughly done by Expectra. A great little document that lists all the important areas. Now, Umbumbulu, as I say, is the Adams Mission areas, Adams College, the Anton Lamberde areas of Durban, and a really important part of Durban history. Steve Kotzer did the liberation history of Durban, and was going to roll out this list to the whole of eThekwini area, but only kind of looked at the central area, and I've got his listed. And unfortunately, Steve is no longer with the city, but I'm sure it'll roll out. Somebody else will roll the others out. But an important part of the history that has been displayed, and I've got a list that Steve put together, which I've included. Artifacts has been an amazing resource for me as well on those practices that have won awards, on some of the turn of the century architects and their buildings, and I've included a lot of information from artifacts, but not all. It's a vast and a most wonderful website. William Martinson, I contacted a few days ago, who runs artifacts, and told him that I was talking today, and hopefully he's joined today. He wanted to get the link, and he said he was joining. So, William, if you're out there, fantastic. Fantastic website. Thank you. I'm really happy with the information that I've put together, that I'm really happy to share it with you. I'll send you everything that I've done so that you've got, because I've found a lot of your information is missing some addresses and things like that, and I can my study will be able to kind of help you with that. A study done by Dr. Paul Mickler and Professor Harbour and Carney quite a few years ago on Hindu temples, which I've used. There are quite a few other Hindu temples that still need to be entered as well, but I have entered quite a few already, which is it's an ongoing thing. This is a growing document, a living document. A survey done by Yusuf Patel of kind of the more important mosques, which I've included. But subsequent to that, I've actually gone to Google and Google mosques in all sorts of areas, and got quite a few other mosques as well. So I've entered them all, because, again, of social importance. If it's important to a group of people, then it's important to everybody. So I think I've got over 100 mosques in this area listed on the list. Dad's did a list, and it was a source from my fantastic teacher, Dennis Claude. He was the go-to Art Deco person in Durban, and he put together this list. I've put this in, all this information in as well. A lot of it was kind of duplicated information that Professor Carney had done already, but there's a lot more out there as well, and a distinction between Art Deco and Style Moderne and the Brea style needs to be made as well, because Deco Society kind of celebrates them all. But that's, can be done. I just wanted to go back to that slide. The thing that you can actually see from these circles that I've done, that the kind of Hammersdale and Mpumalanga area, closest to, on the way to Pietermaritzburg, is kind of missing. I know that a study has been done on the struggle in that area, and I really would like to try and get hold of that study and enter it in as well. Then I can probably say that I've covered most areas of the metropole areas. I'm sure there are a lot of others areas that I'm missing as well, and that can be added. These are other source documents that I've put in as well. Of course, the Act, with those protected sites. Professor Foscura and Lindsay Napier did a study on the Warwick area, Grey Street area, if you can call it that. Plaques of Identification Project, also done by Steve Kotze, was a document that described things really beautifully, so I've included that. A study on Durban North done quite a few years ago, 1975, by the then city engineer, C.G. Hands. Ilwazi have done some work as well. And Ilwazi are those people that really they record in that intangible histories, the kind of stories that go with a lot of these sites, and they doing some amazing work at recording a lot of that sort of intangibles. I've spoken about this already. The other mosque site through Google. It's amazing what you can do with these modern resources. Survey of council housings built in 1940. There were a whole lot of housing schemes done, and I think there are about 190 odd of these buildings built in various parts of Durban. I've made my own kind of list of them because there was no list. It was almost if they didn't want to be on a list anyway. So, and they're beautiful buildings, and really could be an amazing model for low-cost housing. 6 flats, three floors of walk up, two flats per floor, grouped around a central sort of play areas for kids and things like that. I really think they are a fantastic model for the way forward in this country. A survey of panhandle sites in the Durban-Brea area, I felt that because it was on panhandles, a lot of them were missed. A lot of the big sites on the Brea were subdivided, and the front sites were more kind of modern buildings that, and the older buildings were in the depths of that site, and one can't see them through the road. And I feel a lot of them were missed by other surveys. So I've done my own study on those specific sites. Arcades and lanes in Durban CBD. The facts about Durban did some work on that, but I've added a few of my own as well. Graveyards in eThekwini area, that was with the help of Google, I could actually get quite a lot of information on that. And Spot My Durban, a study done for the UI conference in Durban in 2012. Fantastic little a snapshot on what local architects felt were the more important buildings in Durban. The format that I've actually used is an Excel spreadsheet, and I just kind of emphasize this is a draft document only as yet, but there are 222, funny enough, 2,222 entries at the moment. I put thousands of hours into the data capturing of all these things into this. I've then gone and checked on all these properties on eThekwini's GIS records, and then corrected a lot of the addresses because their bona fide address really is the one that's registered on eThekwini's GIS. So really tried to correct all of that. I've also gone to done a spreadsheet showing all the new street names, and I've used the old street names, but I've bracketed the old street names in with it because sorry about that. For research purposes, one needs to know what the old name was. I also went to Google Street View. I visited every single 2,222 sites on Google Street View to see whether the building still existed, and found many of them to have been demolished, whether legally or illegally, I'm not sure. But I can hand this over to them off, and they can check their records to see whether things have been applied for. But again, these are the sort of double standards that are met, that those that are applying for MARFA certificates are the ones being given the hard time, and the people that are just doing things are not even being a police. So it's just kind of proof that is actually happening. With the Excel format, I've categorized certain things in different columns, so I could prioritize those columns and then group things. Like I can have a group all the William Street Wilson buildings, or I can group all the churches, all the mosques. I can group different areas and things like, and say, okay, these are all the list of buildings within that area. And that's kind of the strength of the Excel document. Although I've been criticized for using Excel, a lot of people feel that there are other formats, but I know Excel, and it's what I've used, and I'm pretty sure with cut and paste one could transfer things into other documents if need be. This is the list that I did of the street name changes, which really would be an appendix to the list, so that if you're looking for Allowall Street, you'll know that it is now called Samora Machel Street, and you could go to Samora Machel on my list and find the Allowall Street address that you're looking for. Okay, so I'm going to try and open the spreadsheet now and just run through it with you and see. Let me just try and get rid of this now. Okay. Bear with me. Okay, so this is my spreadsheet here. Let me just oops, there we go. There you can see how much entry there is in it, and the full size of the. Let me just go through here. So the categories that I've used really is the source document, whether the WP is Wally Peters, whether Nanda Heritage Route, the blue here is those protected sites that have been declared, whether it's a BTK and his code, Brian Carney, DUAD, Dennis Radford, or the Expectra study on Umubulu. Google mosques. Let me just go up to the categories, go in the address, the suburbs, longitude and latitude. You can see a lot of work needs to be still be done on that. The build date, the author, whether it's Tennyson Yankovitz or Helen Taron and Partners or Isaiah Shembe. I've tried to note them. You can see again, there's quite a bit of work to be done there as well. Subsequent work to that, whether Trish Emmett has restored it, it is all kind of noted here. The type of building and era, I've tried to do that so one could actually group those. The site used, whether it be a church, a cemetery, a mosque, a park, I can group those if need be. The uniqueness, is it part of a group? I've categorized other things in there as well. I don't know what the 500 is about there, but then just a category for notes, and I've been coming up with some really quite nice descriptions. I've just been including it there. Again, a lot of work can still be done on that, but let me just run through the different colors. The beige color really is a protected site under the 60-year clause. They buildings that are built before 1964 right now. The green are buildings that are younger than 60 years old, therefore aren't protected by the 60-year clause, but are important buildings because they've been in this one, Dennis Radford as included in his document. The red ones are the fact that the building has now been demolished. On my journey through in Street View, I could not find these buildings, or I could actually see that it clearly had been replaced by a more modern building. The yellow areas are areas that I have a question about. I need to do some additional work on it to try and see and verify the information, or I don't have information and I feel that I can maybe find it somewhere. So I've just earmarked those in yellow. again, the pale blue is our declared site. There's the, I can go up to the top again, the SARA code, and that runs down, and there's the SARA code. I've allowed here for, I was going to at one time have a ward code where I could actually get the ward councillors and the communities involved in, but yeah, that's a thing that is quite controversial and needs to be discussed and see what the merits are of that. But that's really the document. And as you can see, let me just run through. The Riches building is protected. The Durban Furnishers building. This is really a category that kind of denotes the name of it, or how it's kind of commonly known. Salisbury Arcade. You'll see here that I've denoted it's an arcade or lane, and when it was, the Salisbury house is separate, but I've separated them out, saying, okay, the building is one and the arcade's another. I've done that on quite a few, like here in Nandesemri. The listing might just be in Nandesemri, but it's made up of 12 buildings, and I've kind of listed all the buildings separately, so that one understands that there is a group of buildings, not just a single building, and then one could actually have information on each of those buildings as well. So really, that is the document, and anybody who wants this document, I can certainly make it available to you. I'm not precious about it. I would like to have as much exposure as possible of this document. So please, if you can use it, then do so. Oops. Let's go from, okay. So back to the presentation. Still to be entered. Things that are here still to be entered. The works of Leonard Rosenberg. I've got some of them, but Len, if you're watching, I need some sort of tangibles and immovables, please, list from you. That'd be fantastic. I've spoken this about before, that big gap, really, the Mpumalanga Hammersdale heritage sites. Churches in eThekwini. I've got a document, places of worship from PlacesNet that lists every church in the entire KwaZulu-Natal. I need to go through that and see what is relevant and enter that information as well. Battlefield sites and war graves in eThekwini. I'm hoping that I can get something from Marfa on that. Commemorative plaques, monuments, memorials, and statues. I believe that all of these really need to be entered into as well. Again, if you can drop a pin onto something and say that is where it is, or that is where it actually happened, then it can be listed. A list of paleontological Iron Age sites in KwaZulu-Natal, or in eThekwini. Again, I'm hoping to get that from Marfa. Natural sites like waterfalls, the Zanzibari settlement on the bluff. I don't have any information on that. I would like, if anybody has any information on that, please, if you could let me have that. Rastafarian sites, the Shembe worship site, which is kind of questionable because one can kind of think certainly Ekopakameni and Ebuhleni are permanent sites, but the rings of white stones, are they immovable? I don't know, or whether they even actually have security of tenure as well, where they set up their churches. But again, it is quite an important part of Durban life, and needs to be noted. If there are any others that anybody can think of that I haven't included, please let me know, and we'll include those. A grading system needs to be set up within this, so that one can actually look at from this list top down, which are the most important? As I said before, if one person is doing that, it is not bona fide. It needs to be a quorum of group of people that are agreeing that on the rating or of each building. From that, one could probably ascertain which buildings need to be upgraded into grade 1 and grade 2 status. As I said, there absolutely is zero buildings on the grade 1 status from KwaZulu-Natal, and I'm sure there should be some of them, like the voting site of Nelson Mandela in Inanda. Surely that is of national importance. The bottom entries, those that kind of filter down to the bottom of the really should be considered to be delisted and not stand in the way of development and the grain of the city. I really think this list should be limited to about 1,000. I don't know what that number should actually be, but it'll come out when one does this top down evaluation and see which ones we feel that really need to be protected. The funding for these experts, I've kind of worked out if 10 sites are evaluated per day, it'll take over 45 weeks to evaluate 2,222. So it's quite a big body of work for a group of people, and surely those people should be paid, unlike me. Incentives should be looked at as well for listed buildings. You know, the people that own listed buildings, there's absolutely no incentive for them to actually own a listed building, and that's just wrong. One needs to find a perk that allows people to actually want to own these buildings, not only that they're really cool buildings. I mean, that's not enough. Unfortunately, they are burdened by also the AMARF applications. If they now have to change the color of their little house, they have to apply to AMARF first to actually do that, which is absolutely ludicrous. I'm sorry. I've listed a couple of ways, you know, that incentives can be done. A rate rebate or a bulk transfer. 6 used to be there to relax the development parameters, but that's been dropped as well now. And it's just really quite a pity that the city does not recognize the beauty of this place and try in some way you know, find incentives to keep that. How do I make this information available to everyone? That's important. And other than talking to you guys now and telling you about, if it is to be a working document, it needs to be available to everybody, and that really is important. GIS is actually a very good global information system is what GIS stands for, as opposed to GPS, which is global positioning system, where you can pin drop and find a code that denotes a place. GIS is really saying that you can map things on a map and find it that way. Getting good information early is something that I've actually used for a long time, that you really, if information is available, there's no question that people say, "Oops, sorry, I didn't know that it was an important building," which I, you know, in my dealings with AMARFA, my assisting AMARFA for so many years, I have got that a lot. And yeah, they're pros and cons of doing this. And you know, doing a hard copy is something that can be done, but it really becomes a a time warp, then or a fixing time, and it should be a document that grows and lives and is managed by a web manager that updates the thing at least once a month or something like that to remain current. And these are things that need to be discussed and see how best to go forward. Maybe one gives all this information over to Artifacts and saying, there we go, that'll be the format of access for people to gain information on sites. I did, when I was working with for the city, I did speak to the GIS department at that time, and they were quite excited to actually include this information into their onto their website. I was speaking to a chap called Buddy Governor at that time, but unfortunately Buddy has now left the GIS department. But I'm sure there are other quite responsive people there as well that one could go and speak to them possibly. Funding, I've done all of this work in my own time, unpaid. In fact, I've the 40 years of work that I've been doing, sitting on AMAFA and heritage committees and things like that, I've never earned a penny from it, and never really wanted to as well, because I've always wanted to do it for the right reasons, because I'm passionate about it and because I feel that it needs to be done. But it comes to a point where if funding is available to do this, that'd be kind of fantastic. It's been tough, and we are all don't have the disposable time that we used to have. We're all trying to kind of make a living these days, so our time is precious. But this is important too, and hopefully one can actually find some sort of funds for that. Now, I just wanted to make this is my last slide, but this really just showing what this is all about. This is the kind of amazing city that we stay in. This all belongs to us. This is ours. It might be owned by a property owner, but we see it and we live it, this beauty that is our city, and we own it with our eyes. It kind of reminds me, I made a little note here as well, that my mom told me many years ago, and I can tell you now as well, that I'm dyslexic and struggle with dyslexia for most of my life. And I learn through different ways. I'm very visual, and that's why architecture appealed to me, and that's why I did it. But she said to me, Frank, steal with your eyes and make it your own, and nobody can hold that against you. And that's what I'm appealing, is saying that let's keep these amazing views of our city, by putting some sort of protection list in place to understand what we have and how we should go about protecting that, and not have the ocean terminal buildings that are now about to be lost. Thank you very much. That's my talk. Thank you.
Frank, thank you so much. I think that was quite interesting, and I know that we've spoken about this before, and you showed it at the institute, but I did not know that it's actually this in depth. Thank you so much for the dedication and the commitment. Frank, I know that printing would definitely be a great thing to have the work documented. Along the lines that we were already speaking about, website and stuff, I think we should look at sponsorship, maybe for an app or some sort of online archive that is live, that can always be updated, to just continue with the great work that you started. What's your thought on that?
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm open to suggestion. Anybody that's got suggestions on how I move forward with this, and try and get as much exposure as possible. I really think it's about promotion and putting it out there, and I'm pretty sure most people will be interested. I found it amazingly interesting. It's kept me going for 5 years, so
Mm,
it's yeah, fantastic.
yeah. Okay. Maybe I think before we talk generally about anything else, I think I'd like to talk specifically about making sure that we preserve the work that we started. I don't know, William Matheson, if you wanted to say something, or anybody else along the lines of preserving the work and making sure that we continue the work and have a vault that's live that can continue to preserve this. Any comment on that? Specifically on that?
Thank you, William Martinson here. I think what Frank has been doing is quite amazing, and it would be marvelous if this information could also be integrated into the Artifacts website, which is sort of available and really a online database of South African built environment and built heritage. So it would be wonderful to combine the two to interact together. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Any other comments?
Skura, can I just comment on that? William, I'll be in contact with you. We'll have a chat. Okay, thanks.
Excellent, thank you.
Lovely. Any other comment?
Skura, yeah, I do have a question for Frank. Frank, we're all architects, certainly, are all visual, just like you. Is there any way we can add photographs to your schedule list? Architects look at pictures and drawings and photographs. They're not great readers, to be quite frank. Is there any way we can add them to your schedule, to your list?
Kenya, I think that's something that needs to be done. And you can see the kind of artwork that I've actually been doing already as well. I've been photographing things, but that's kind of a whole study on its own as well. Now, I really think that the evaluation should happen first, and those are the top 100 or top 500 really need to be photographed and documented in that way.
Why can't you call on the architects in Durban, to actually add photographs? You don't have to do it all yourself.
That was why I wanted to actually do it in the different ward areas and things like that, because then I would have actually tasked various areas, say, hey, if you live in this area, can you kind of document these for us? But yeah, I don't know. We can discuss this, you know,
Sure.
way forward at a heritage committee or something like that. But you know, a good idea. Yes, photography is actually an important part of it as well.
As you said at the beginning, it's a living document. It's a dynamic document. It needs to be added to and possibly subtracted from.
Exactly.
Anyway, at the end of the day, I don't know whether Skura wants to go on, but I have my major question is, so what? So what, Frank? And it really does raise the question of the benefit and need for this whole process. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a bit here, Frank.
Do.
You know, architects are being pushed to reuse, recycle, renovate, repair, retrofit. How does this fit into this whole process of listing? And when as soon as you start listing, you start protecting. We are a dynamic society. We're moving forward. Are we limiting the chances of chances for creativity, for the new? One has to ask, would Art Deco ever happened if there was strict control of buildings 100 years ago? I don't know. It's a question I have to ask myself, and I think all architects should be asking it. There are some wonderful resources, wonderful buildings that, yes, obviously, definitely need to be looked after, protected, renovated, nurtured, loved. But there are also significant numbers of buildings in our city that really need to be uplifted, retrofitted. We have this constant battle with looking backwards and then looking forwards, and we have huge pressures on urbanization, on the growth of cities. We are told internationally that cities are the future of mankind, that in no more than 30 years' time, we're going to have in the region of 80% of our population living in cities. What do we do with the buildings that are possibly need to be replaced for new uses? Anyway, Frank, there we go. Devil's advocate bit. Any comments?
Good question, Ken. Karuni, I see your hand. Frank, could you please give that a go?
Oh no, give Karuni a go, then I'll answer Ken after
At the same
Karuni.
time.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Hi,
Karuni?
Frank. No, hi, Frank. Morning, everyone. Sure, that spreadsheet is great, Frank. It's like a body of work, you know. It just shows your passion for heritage, and I just want to thank you for all the help you've given me in my career, because you're always my go-to heritage person. If I need to know anything before I research, I give Frank a call. But Frank, the pain of undertaking research when you, as an architect, have to apply for a MAFA permit, it's a nightmare, you know. And we need to, and it's a problem I think everybody has. I don't know, I'm just speaking for myself. Having to undertake research which doesn't exist, having to figure out the grading issue. What are the different people talking about gradings, you know, and there's no base document. So I think it's a wonderful piece of work. I think it should reside within SAIA KZN, and Skura, maybe it's a project, and it's an ongoing project of the institute, you know, and that's our contribution to making sure that we look after our architectural heritage. So, but also has advantages for, you know, developers, people buying a piece of land and understanding the limitations of what they're buying before they buy it, and then knowing that they've got to do permits, etc.
Estate agent especially as well.
Yeah, you know, it's very important before you purchase a property to understand the limitations, you know, on if it is over a certain period of time, or if it is a listed graded building, etc. You know, the pressures we have around gentrification in our cities and competition for urban space, not just competition for urban space, but competition for the barrier, for example. You know, there's competition. There's competition for views. You know, there's if you look at every building on the ridge now, the ridge is becoming a quite a high-rise sort of strip of property these days. But Frank, I just want to ask you, so I've got some information on the Zanzibari community, which I'll share with you because I did some work for them. Yeah, it goes back to 1873. Yeah. The history which you may need to incorporate would be the struggle history, you know, and then that's something that's quite close, dear to me, because that is my history. Some of that resides at the 1860 Heritage Center, and I know Len Rosenberg's been working quite closely with them to document stuff, not just around the Indian indenture history, but also around the Black heritage resources in Durban.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think the, you know, this listing, and you didn't speak to it, but is there not a responsibility for this listing in terms of the acts in South Africa? Okay, because that would suggest who is supposed to be funding this exercise, right? And some of our entities must not absolve themselves from the fact that they actually need to fund it. And I won't specifically say which agencies, but surely if there's an act in South Africa which says that, you know, which protects heritage, it should also then be guiding us in terms of how do we get listings like this together, because it's very important. You can't look after heritage if you don't have an idea of what is your listing.
Yeah.
Because Frank, I think the funding is linked to that as well, you know, and who actually pays for that. Our clients shouldn't pay for it. Every time we submit a drawing to the municipality or to a MAFA to get a permit, it shouldn't have to be a large amount of research that we have to undertake and that our clients have to pay for, because not all our clients have got funding for heritage research, you know, and it depends on the scale, Frank. I mean, I'm thinking if it's a big building and it's a developer that's got loads of money, that's fine. But you know, your normal house on the Berea here, you know, if you buy a house that's has exceptional Victorian or Edwardian heritage, Frank, and for some reason it's slipped between the cracks and somebody has to do a proper documentation of it, how's the new owner of this property going to fund that? I don't know. I find it that's a bit strange for me. Last point, Frank, and I know I've spoken to you about this before, is the ethical issues around demolition permits. For me, is a huge problem. You know, as architects, we should be looking after our heritage. And I know the constraints around the lack of work and why architects do demolition permits, but it's become a production line. Now it's become a source of work, and it's also becoming a source of a headache for all of us, because we're just losing our architectural heritage. So you could please just talk to those. My last point, Adima is not here. She would talk to post-colonial, but I think it's very important to, you know, we're living in an era now where we're starting to look at heritage within a very different space and time. You know, we're looking at responses now that are post-colonial, and there are other issues that are coming in and impacting the way that we to deal with heritage in South Africa. So I just find little guidance around that, very little guidance for me as an architect. How do I undertake research, or how do I undertake a piece of architecture? What guidelines do I have? What should I be doing? What should I be looking at? Where are the sources of research for that? And I'll stop there. Thanks, Frank.
But, you know, Karini, I mean, you're right. Maybe this document would actually assist you on that, you know, point you in the right direction and things like that as well. You know, the possibilities of linking photographs and the whole of Michelle Jacobs's cataloging system in the library and things like that. You know, one should really have all that information at your fingertips if you're doing, as you rightly said, you know, a development actually happening. Where does one get this information from, and how does one get this good information as early as possible? And this is kind of what I had in mind when I started this thing, saying, look, let's try and make this information available.
And thanks, Frank. And the question that was raised by Ken.
I've forgotten it now.
Well, you was essentially saying, are we now not limiting architecture if we put some of the buildings on a pedestal, for example? Would we have Art Deco today if we had stringent regulations?
It's correct. I think, and Ken, I really think that you know, this has been an age-old problem that every area has gone through this, and there are brownfield and greenfield sites always, and there's always room for new architecture. But it's all about respect, really, at the end of the day, and understanding those buildings of quality, and putting some sort of significance to things, so that one understands that one can have demolished buildings, but don't demolish the good ones. And how does one manage that? I really think there is always, I feel this document is a step in the right direction in putting forward a management system that will say, okay, these are the ones that are important, but the rest are not, and let development happen on those. I suppose one needs to actually kind of say as well, and as Wally Peters taught me, infill architecture is important and area is important as well. So if you've got a really beautiful building and area, the sites around it need to then start paying respect to that as well. It's not just a free-for-all, and a common architectural language needs to be found, so that there's a community of buildings as opposed to a whole lot of aliens being sucked in. This is a whole different thesis and talk as well. Thanks, Greg.
I see Wally Peters, Trish Abbott, Ivor Daniel. I'd love one of you to say something if you have.
Yes.
But Frank, what do you think of the 60-year rule? Part of Mlazi now is 60. Part of Chatsworth is 60.
Most
and
of it,
these, these are now regular houses.
yeah.
I think that at least like this assists us in saying, what are we looking at and what are we looking for in terms of the process of submission, etc. I mean, otherwise people in the townships extend their houses all the time, and they are over 60, they are not even submitted to council. So it's not really applicable. It's not really easy to apply or to implement the 60-year rule. What's your thought on it?
I really think the 60-year clause is still important, but it needs to be managed in a way that it really just needs to be a catch net. It just needs to be a means of saying, okay, your building's over 60 years old, get it assessed, and the city should really make people available to give a quick assessment on a building, and that question should be, is it important enough to go onto a list? And if the answer is yes, put it on the list, and then let it run through the process of a MAFA. But if the answer is no, at that stage, let it go. Just don't hinder development. As I say, 60-year-old clause is important, but the way it is managed, the way it's been managed at the moment, that every 60-year-old building has to go to a MAFA by law, is, in my mind, quite ridiculous. And some people are doing it. The law-abiding people are doing it, and they're getting the big stick from a MAFA and being given a hard time, where a large majority of people are probably because they don't know about the 60-year clause as well, are just doing their own thing anyway. But a MAFA is doing absolutely nothing about that. They don't have the ability to police the 60-year clause. They don't have people on the ground actually watching like the city has the building inspectors, and they don't talk to each other anymore anyway. So there's no coordination between a MAFA and the city anymore. I had a chat to Bilal Haq the other day as well, who was doing that task as well, and it's very, very difficult for him as well. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Prof. Peters?
Thank you very much, Frank. It really is wonderful that you're able to find the time to put these different bits and pieces together into one compact assessment for the whole lot. That is really an invaluable piece of work. And I do hope it'll be available via artifacts or some other means so that many people can make use of the work which you so generously have contributed. And thanks for the reference to myself. Look, I've only got one little point to address. And that also got me this comment the other day when the chair of AMAFA pointed to the change in paint color. And I tried to find it in the Act, and the only thing I can find, but haven't found it this morning, is that it refers not to color, but to paint. And of course, that has a very good reason, because sometimes people put up coats which are actually damage to fabric. And that's the thing which you need to observe very carefully. But I don't think color per se is actually the word used. thank you very much. It's really a minor item, but really enjoyed the work you've been doing, and keep at it, Frank. Don't let go. As you know, unfortunately, things are to be demolished as well.
Thank you, Professor. Shura, can I respond to that quickly?
Yeah, absolutely.
On the paint color thing, you know, it is a problem when the Heritage Authority has no architects on their panels, and that there is a lawyer that is chairing it as well, and the interpretation of the Act, as you rightly said, Wally, is misconstrued and seen in through lawyers' eyes, and that has really become absolutely ludicrous. They don't understand the implications of the fact that they now want everybody to, if they're going to paint their building, to apply to a MAFA first if their building is over 6 years old. I mean, that's just completely unmanageable. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Trish?
Yes, thank you. I want to thank Frank for his dedication and his hard work. I mean, that's an incredible body of work. And it documents primarily the buildings of architectural merit. But I'd like to put a word in for the rest of the heritage. Our heritage committee has got more involved with problem buildings, and the most green building is an old building because that's it's a resource. And I think we really need to look at recycling these buildings to provide housing, and it might not line up with post-colonial theory because who built the buildings, but they are a resource, and a lot of them are in the inner city where they're very close for people to get to work. There was a talk last night from the city, and they made it very clear that we really should be looking at this, and there are a lot of incentives to get those old buildings actually contributing again. Thank you.
Thanks, Trish.
Thank you, Trish. I think the discussions we have started with dilapidated buildings department, I'm not sure how they word themselves, when the institute is very important, and we'll keep at that, because the World Bank was here, I think 2 weeks ago. Myself and Chantel went, and they are really keen on doing some pilot projects specifically for housing. So I think that will be a start in the right direction. So yeah, thanks for that. Any other comment?
Good.
Good. So Frank, thank you so much. I do think that going forward, we should look at what type of sponsorship we need to document what you've done. But it's just incredible work. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you very much, Guru. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely.
No, Frank, thank you.
Just a general comment, colleagues. Yesterday we were hosting DUT Architecture Department. There is an exhibition at the Institute. 160 Buller Road is going to be there for 2 weeks. I'd like to urge members to really come through when we have an exhibition by UKZN or DUT, because what we are trying to do is to have the students meet practitioners for networking, etc. Yesterday we had very few architects come through. So in future, may I please urge you guys to just come through, meet the young people, inspire them. But the exhibition will be at 160 Buller Road for the next 2 weeks.